Theirs was a romance that blossomed in a fairy tale setting between a caring mother of two
Family was always her top priority.
and a handsome coworker that swept her off her feet.
He was the total package for her. She said, he just makes me feel like nobody ever made me feel before.
But a savage attack would plunge their lives into darkness.
This was one of the bloodiest and most horrific crime scenes that people could remember.
You wouldn't kill a dog in the way that she was killed.
Investigators would ultimately uncover a trail of violence and deception
It was shocking. I didn't know what to think at the time.
and leave everyone wondering, was this macabre execution the work of a sadistic stranger? Or was this monster a member of the victim's innermost circle?
There's this dark side of this guy that he's been hiding for years, and he released it in such a vicious way.
Saturday, January 17th, 2009, Niagara Falls, New York. The sun is dropping over this picturesque city, the self-proclaimed honeymoon capital of the world. But shortly after 5 p.m., emergency dispatchers receive a call from an apartment on the north end of town.
A man named Robert Johnson found his wife apparently dead on the kitchen floor of their apartment.
An officer is only blocks away when the call goes out from dispatch. He arrives within minutes, finds the front door open, and Robert Johnson cradling his wife in agony.
So what happened?
I don't know.
He was crying out to the police officers about the horrible discovery he just made. There was blood all over the floor.
She was stabbed multiple times.
In fact, some of the weapons used in the attack are still lodged in her body.
There were 2 knife blades broken off along the side of the torso.
I'm gonna need for you to go ahead and stand up. So we don't need to clear. I need for you to go ahead and stand up.
Within moments, other officers and paramedics arrive on the scene.
He was reacting so emotionally to having found his wife. Robert Johnson had to be pulled away from the body.
As Robert is dragged away, EMTs rush in to check Kenya's vitals, but there's nothing they can do.
They quickly pronounced Kenya Johnson dead at the scene.
Even for seasoned detectives, this homicide is beyond the pale.
The crime scene was gruesome. Her head was cut very severely to the point that it was almost a decapitation.
But as officers attempt to console a shell-shocked Robert Johnson, nobody can imagine how this 32-year-old wife and mother fell victim to such a chilling crime. Kenya Bashana Thornton, or Kenya as she was known, grew up in Niagara Falls, the second of 4 children.
Kenya, she was the quiet one. She was real reserved, and she was a homebody.
She didn't party, she didn't drink, she didn't smoke, really didn't go out to clubs.
But as Kenya grew up, this good girl discovered she had a weakness for bad boys.
She liked street guys that were like in the fast lane. Someone total opposite of who she was is what she attracted.
Kenya's first love definitely fit the bill, and at 23, she gave birth to a beautiful baby girl named Naomi. Although the relationship didn't last, Kenya worshipped her daughter.
Kenya was excited. She was happy to be having her first child.
In 2000, she landed a good job at a local call center.
Kenya made actually pretty good money there, doing customer service calls and whatnot.
While working at the call center, Kenya met a handsome, straight-laced coworker by the name of Robert Johnson.
How you doing today?
I'm good. You?
I'm all right. How was work?
It was good. I can't complain.
Though Robert wasn't cut from the brash, street tough cloth that Kenya found so attractive, he made it abundantly clear that he wanted to be more than just friends.
He sent her flowers at work. Robert would send her candy.
You'll be available around Saturday night?
Yeah, I'm free Saturday night.
I'm sure.
Yes!
Kenya was excited.
Every time she see him, she told me she get butterflies in her stomach. She hasn't felt this way in so long. Like he'd kiss her, she just would float.
It wasn't just the way Robert treated Kenya that made her feel special. It was the way he treated her daughter, Naomi, too.
He was very accepting of her daughter that she already had. Robert loved her daughter just like he loved his own daughter.
Pretty soon, Robert and Kenya were inseparable. So much so that even when Kenya hit the town without Robert, she didn't stay out long.
We all got together and we went out. She left and went on her date with Robert. When you leave your girlfriends to go with a guy, then you're into the guy.
A couple months later, Kenya announced she was pregnant with Robert's child.
We told her, if you had stayed with us, you wouldn't be heading this way, but it was a good thing for her.
By the winter of 2004, Kenya and Robert were raising 2 beautiful young daughters.
Kenya was so happy. She was such a good mother. Robert was just as happy. He was a very good father. He was very tender. He helped Kenya.
A few weeks later, the couple officially tied the knot.
I'm home.
Daddy!
Hey!
So that made me happy because I had someone who I knew was going to be taking care of Kenya, my niece, and so it was exciting to see the young love that they both had for one another.
The couple decided Kenya would stay home for a while to be with the children. And as they settled into their new apartment, Robert and Kenya seemed to be living a life of pure bliss.
She was pretty much at home all the time at that point, and he was at work all day. She was just so happy. I never saw Kenya happy like that.
But Kenya had no intention of remaining a stay-at-home mom forever. In 2007, she enrolled at Bryant and Stratton College in nearby Buffalo.
She was going to school to be a medical assistant.
She loved it. Kenya was doing great. Dean's List, great grades. Awesome grades.
As for Robert, he was also working hard. He'd recently taken a new job as a sales rep with a local cable company, which required him to log a lot of time on the road, which soon put a strain on their marriage.
So now the partnership with them, with the kids, and the workload and whatnot was kind of a little shaky then.
Things started looking up again in the fall of 2008, when Robert came home with some exciting news.
Sit down, I got a surprise for you.
No, I hate surprises.
You're gonna like this.
He told Kenya that there was an opportunity to move to Atlanta and get a job there.
According to Robert, the job would be better pay with better hours.
It's caused us forced to relocate to Atlanta.
Shut up.
Yeah, so that means we gotta move to Atlanta.
To her friends, Kenya seemed ecstatic.
Told me they were moving. She was excited. I was happy for her. If it was gonna work out and they were gonna move away, then that was good.
A loving marriage, 2 beautiful children, a future full of promise. It seemed Robert and Kenya were well on the road to a long and happy life together.
Kenya!
Which made the grisly scene inside their home the night of January 17th all the more unthinkable.
People like a Kenya don't get murdered.
She would never do anything to hurt anybody. Who would do something to her like that?
If detectives are going to answer that question, they will need to unlock a vault filled with secrets. Secrets that would reveal this wasn't the first time a knife-wielding attacker had stormed into the Johnsons' home. Robert and Kenya Johnson began as co-workers and ended up as husband and wife. With 2 beautiful children and blossoming careers, their life seemed complete.
She told me, Robert, he just makes me feel like nobody ever made me feel before. And I'm like, I'm so happy for you. You finally found happiness.
But on January 17th, 2009, that happiness was torn asunder when Robert came home to find Kenya dead on the kitchen floor, her body riddled with stab wounds.
It was shocking. It was like unbelievable.
As first responders attempt to console a seemingly devastated Robert, investigators try to piece together what happened.
They counted 49 stab wounds in the body. Her throat had been cut basically from ear to ear. The police discovered that there were 3 knife blades stuck in the body of Kenya Johnson. And these knife blades had the handles broken off them, and broken knife handles were found at the scene.
As CSIs collect the knives and other physical evidence, news of this horrible tragedy spreads to the family.
It was devastating. I've never experienced that type of feeling or emotion that I experienced that day.
It was still like, this is not true. Somebody's gonna call us back and tell us that this is a terrible joke.
I'm trying to think who in the world would do something like this to this person.
It's the same question police are asking. They start by questioning the man who called 911, Kenya's beloved husband.
My name is Robert Johnson.
Robert, what happened today?
Went to the barber shop.
He explains that the couple was at home most of the day, preparing for a party to celebrate their big move to Atlanta.
The whole family going to Atlanta, everybody?
Yes.
But according to Robert, the couple's daughters had a birthday party to attend as well.
I went to pick up the girls to bring them to the party because Kenya still had some running around to do before the party.
Robert says once the party preparation was over, he walked to the corner barbershop to get his hair cut. He returned an hour later, and that's when he found Kenya and called 911. To detectives, Robert seems to be telling the truth, and his story checks out with both Kenya's friends and the employees at the corner barbershop.
There was a very solid alibi. The barber said that he cut Robert's hair, nothing of note about Robert.
I felt bad for him. I thought this poor guy came in and found his wife dead on the floor.
With Robert eliminated as a suspect, detectives wonder what happened in that fateful hour Kenya was home alone. One possibility is that Kenya was somehow the victim of a robbery gone wrong.
You notice anything missing in the house?
I don't know. I didn't get a chance to look.
Police checked the apartment to see if there was any evidence of a burglary. They found there was no sign of forced entry and nothing appeared to be missing or out of place.
The lack of stolen goods suggests robbery might not be the motive. The same goes for the vicious nature of the attack itself.
This was one of the bloodiest and most horrific crime scenes that people could remember.
It was extremely violent because of the nature of the attack. It seems unusual that some stranger would walk in and just stab someone multiple times.
If the murder is personal, who's responsible? Shocked neighbors describe the Johnsons as a nice, quiet couple beloved by all. What's more, no one reports seeing or hearing anything suspicious that day. With the investigation going nowhere, detectives again turn to Robert in hopes he can identify someone who might want Kenya dead.
They decided to take him down to police headquarters where it would be quieter.
Once down at the station, investigators noticed something they'd overlooked earlier that afternoon at the scene.
What's up with the blood on your shirt?
It's from holding Kenya.
They noticed that there was blood on his clothing.
But it's not the only blood they see.
There were some small cuts on Robert Johnson's right hand.
On your hands?
This happened when I punched the rail and the police came.
This officer's gonna tell you what you need to do, all right?
Sure.
Investigators ask him if he'd allow CSIs to take some samples for blood and DNA testing. Robert gladly agrees. As he's removing his clothes, investigators note even more blood.
A crime scene investigation officer noticed a spot of blood in the center of Robert's chest.
Robert gives police his consent to collect a sample of the blood. Detectives send the sample and Robert's bloody clothes to the crime lab for analysis. Robert also volunteers to give police his and Kenya's cell phones.
He was cooperative with them the entire time he was there.
But in order to determine who might want Kenya dead, detectives have to ask some difficult and deeply personal questions.
Now, Robert, neither one of y'all were having an affair.
No.
Robert describes a happy, healthy, and faithful marriage.
Well, help me out. Tell me who done this.
And that's when Robert gives police their first break.
I kind of got an idea.
Robert recounts a frightening ordeal that happened several months earlier when he was home alone with the kids.
Ain't no drugs in here, man. What is y'all doing? There ain't no drugs. You got him. Ain't no drugs.
Just 3 months before the homicide, there was a robbery and a home invasion at the Johnson home. Robert was home.
Two guys with black hooded sweatshirts rushed in the house and they made all the kids get in the closet. They told the kids, if you come out the closet, we're gonna kill you.
Come on, man. Yeah.
Robert says the attackers demanded drugs.
He suspected the perpetrators had reason to believe that Mrs. Johnson's cousin, who lives across the street, might have some of his stash.
Robert tells police that when he explained to the attackers that there were no drugs in the house, one of the men attacked him. And though his injuries weren't fatal, they did leave scars.
There were scratches on his back because the intruders had knives.
Not only are the knives Robert describes similar to the ones used in the attack on Kenya, a police report verifies his account of the assault. Unfortunately, no arrests were ever made.
That crime kind of went by the wayside and went unsolved.
Is it possible that Robert's assailants had returned in search of drugs again?
Someone may have been storing drugs in the house, and that may have been what the intruders were looking for.
I'll give you my card. If you have any questions, you give us a call, okay? No matter how small you think it might be, all right?
They questioned him there for 3 hours before letting him go. It seemed like they were considering him to be a shocked husband who had discovered a horrible crime had been committed against his wife.
But as detectives begin hunting down these mysterious home invaders, evidence will surface that steers them in a different direction and exposes the details of a forbidden relationship, one so tawdry, nobody in the Johnsons' inner circle could have ever seen coming.
Shocking. Still disbelief to this day. Still can't believe what happened.
Police in Niagara Falls are struggling to solve a shocking murder. Kenya Johnson was stabbed nearly 50 times and left for dead in the home she shared with her husband and 2 young daughters.
The crime scene was gruesome.
Who could do this?
Kenya's husband Robert has just informed police of a violent home invasion that took place at their apartment 3 months prior to the murder.
Ain't no drug. Ain't no drug. Get the girls, man.
Someone had broken into the house and made the kids get into the closet.
The similarities between this attack and the attack on Kenya are undeniable.
Where 2 robbers came in and tried to look for some drugs with knives.
And based on Robert's statement, they appear to have been carried out by drug dealers targeting the wrong residents.
That's all I heard. Like, there was a cousin of hers that had a stash.
Maybe someone was targeting this home for whatever reason. They tried back in October, and then they thought when Robert leaves to get his hair cut that they've got free reign in the home, and then they're shocked when someone's in there, and that was a Kenya in there.
So tell me about Kenya.
Looking for answers, police track down Kenya's cousin and question him about his involvement with drugs. He denies the allegations and claims to have no knowledge of the identity of the assailants.
Any of that stuff going on in the neighborhood?
Not to my knowledge. I mean, I'm hearing every day, and, I don't see anything out of the ordinary.
As for any potential involvement in drugs on Kenya's part, friends and family are skeptical.
To think that this could have been done to her by a drug dealer, it just didn't match. Kenya didn't have those kinds of enemies. She was not ever involved in a lifestyle of drugs.
Investigators are having a hard time connecting the dots. But if drug dealers aren't to blame, who is?
Nobody goes and kills somebody that they don't know and stab them that many times. And the knife blades and the neck thing and all that, this was personal.
Detectives dig deeper into Kenya's personal life, hoping to find something, anything that will help unravel this mystery. They reach out to Kenya's older sister, Africa.
Can you describe your relationship with your sister?
We were close.
She knew Kenya like no other.
Kenya would, tell me everything. I mean, everything. I talked to her every single day on the phone, 2, 3, 4 times a day.
And as Africa recalls some of those conversations, a new person of interest begins to emerge. A former boyfriend named Letario Humphrey. According to Africa, much like many of Kenya's previous suitors, Letario was a bit rough around the edges.
Did Kenya like street guys?
Kinda like street guys, yeah. The bad boys.
Letario, he was like a street guy as well.
While dating Kenya back in 2002, Letario was arrested and sent to prison for drugs.
their relationship kind of fizzled off after he went to jail.
Even though Kenya had been with Robert ever since, she kept Laterio in her heart. And when he was released from prison 5 months prior, in September 2008, Kenya paid Laterio a visit.
She said they had went out to lunch a few times, her and Laterio.
But were Kenya and Laterio having more than just lunch? According to Africa, that was the rumor, at least among Kenya's girlfriends.
And it wasn't shocking because I knew that Laterio still had feelings for her, Kenya.
However, Kenya's sister isn't so sure these rumors are true.
Well, I mean, her friends used to play around about them having a relationship.
He was kind of like her confidant. She said, Africa, he's just somebody that listens to me and we talk to each other. She never, ever said to me that they started sleeping together again, but is it possible? Yes.
For investigators, Africa's statement triggers a new theory. Is it possible that Kenya cheated on Robert with Laterio, only to put the brakes on the affair once it became clear that she and Robert would soon be moving to Atlanta? And did Laterio decide that if he couldn't have Kenya, nobody could? Detectives track down Laterio Humphrey and bring him in for questioning.
Did you sleep with her? I mean, she came over a couple times. Did you sleep with her? Yes, I slept with her.
He was freed from prison on September 10th, 2008, and told the police that very soon after that, he resumed his relationship with Kenya Johnson.
He was there for her, talked to her. He just made her happy.
Detectives press Laterio about Kenya's murder, but Laterio's adamant he had nothing to do with his lover's brutal death.
So let me tell you this, you had nothing to do with that, is that what you're saying?
I had nothing to do with it, man. That's crazy if you think I did. I loved her.
Given Laterio's lengthy criminal history, detectives are skeptical.
He had served prison time. He had several drug convictions. He was recently released from prison.
But without any hard evidence, investigators have no choice but to release him and turn back to Kenya's sister Africa for more intel on Laterio, who makes another startling revelation.
Robert had access to Kenya's phone, and she did tell me a while back that he found some text messages.
Text messages that demonstrated just how close Kenya and Laterio still were. Kenya then informed Robert that she and the kids wouldn't be making the move to Atlanta with him, and that the going-away party she was planning was only for him.
She was not going. She was staying here in the city.
It would be much easier for her to break away from him once he was out of the picture or out of the city.
Investigators are floored. By all accounts, Kenya and Robert seemed like they had the perfect marriage. But Africa informs them that the marriage was broken long before Laterio came back into the picture.
Kenya and Robert's relationship, I think it started to go bad before Laterio came home from jail. They just were having problems in their relationship.
In fact, Kenya had secretly complained to her for years that she was unhappy with Robert and that they were no longer intimate.
No, he was even sleeping in his bedroom.
Kenya had told Robert, I don't think this is gonna work. I just don't want to be with you anymore.
An alleged affair, a rocky marriage, plans for a separation. Africa's statement is a stark contrast to the picture Robert Johnson described to police. Investigators can't help but wonder, what other information is Robert Johnson hiding? But in an effort to learn the whole truth, detectives will unearth more lies and make another shocking discovery. Kenya wasn't the only one hiding a secret love affair.
We didn't know who she was, we didn't know anything about her. We just knew that it was another woman.
It's now been more than 48 hours since 32-year-old Kenya Johnson was found brutally stabbed to death in her kitchen. On the surface, it seems Kenya and her husband Robert were the perfect couple. But new information suggests the marriage was in trouble, and Kenya was having an affair with an old flame.
Kenya was reportedly having an affair with a man named Laterio Humphrey, who was a former boyfriend of hers.
Not only was Kenya allegedly having an affair, but contrary to what Robert originally told police, her husband seemed to know all about it. Detectives now believe this knowledge might just be a motive for murder.
The homicide may have resulted in part from Robert's jealousy over Kenya's relationship with Laterio Humphrey.
There's just one problem with that theory: Robert's airtight alibi.
There was a barber shop near the Jordan Gardens apartment, and the barber, Fred Gilmer, said that Robert Johnson arrived in his barber shop to get his hair cut.
We need to find out this number, this 555-1969. It shows up a lot on his records.
Detectives decide to take a look at Robert's cell phone, which he gave police on the night of the murder.
You want to get the phone?
At first, nothing seems out of the ordinary. But as investigators pour through the records, something jumps out. On the morning of the murder, Robert was communicating with somebody listed as my wifey. But it wasn't Kenya's number.
Robert was having contact via text message and phone call with the other woman.
I was like really shocked, like, oh my God.
Who was this woman, and why was Robert referring to her as his wifey? A search of records indicates the phone number belongs to a woman named Lakeisha Davis. And when detectives learn Lakeisha is working at a fast food restaurant in nearby Buffalo...
Lakeisha? Hey, what if I talk to you this man? I'm Investigator Davis, Investigator Clemens. Have a seat right over here.
Good. They decide to drop in for a surprise visit. Detectives ask Lakeisha how she knows Robert. What she tells them is jaw-dropping.
Do you know Robert Johnson?
Of course, he's my fiancé.
We found out that Robert had a whole fiancé. He was engaged to somebody else. He brought her a ring and everything.
We found out Robert was, I guess, seeing another girl. I was shocked. I thought they loved each other, that Kenya and Robert had a loving relationship.
While it's certainly shocking, news of Robert's engagement to Lakeisha Davis seems to undermine the theory that Robert murdered Kenya in a fit of jealousy.
If you find out your spouse is having an affair, but you're having one also, I think that cuts against any rage motive.
But what about Robert's new fiancée, Lakeisha Davis? Could she have found out about Kenya and murdered her in order to get rid of the competition?
You see love turn into murder. The people who do this have a very unusual way of showing love. They try to get the person all to themselves. They don't want to share them with anybody else, and things turn violent very easily.
But Lakeisha Davis has an airtight alibi as well.
Where were you on Saturday, the 17th?
Saturday the 17th. Actually, I was here working because I work the weekends.
And not long after confirming Lakeisha's alibi, police receive a forensic report from their CSI team.
The police officers found blood in a number of different locations in the apartment. One of them was on the wall of a staircase.
In addition to the staircase, CSIs have also discovered additional blood evidence in a downstairs washroom.
What they found was when they tested for DNA inside the sink trap in the wash basin, they found a Kenya Johnson's DNA.
The CSI team also recovered one more murder weapon.
They found another bloody knife that was bent inside a kitchen drawer of the apartment.
The additional murder weapon and the new blood evidence in the sink suggests someone tried to clean up the crime scene. But the most critical evidence from the CSI report is the DNA test from the blood sample taken from Robert's chest.
And it matched to Kenya's blood.
Robert initially told police that it was his blood from a scrape he sustained moving furniture. If he was innocent of Kenya's murder, why would he lie? To answer that question, detectives bring Robert in for another interview.
Tell me the truth. What happened to Kenya? What you mean tell you the truth? I've been telling the truth.
They said they wanted to ask him some more questions. And in the course of a 2-hour interview, they ended up basically accusing him of killing his wife.
It's on you. We got her DNA off you.
Robert sticks to his original story, that he was at the barber shop at the time of the crime. Though there are eyewitness accounts corroborating that statement, detectives know physical evidence doesn't lie. They begin grilling Robert about the knife CSIs have recovered from the drawer.
Why would the killer put the knife in the drawer?
I don't know.
They wanted to know why a burglar, if that's who killed a Kenya Johnson, would put the murder weapon back in a drawer. Johnson replied, I don't know. A dumb one?
Enough of this. Robert Johnson, you're under arrest for the murder of a Kenya Johnson. Stand up.
It's not the answer investigators are looking for. So on February 17th, nearly a month after investigators encountered a tearful Robert Johnson, cradling the blood-soaked body of his slain wife. He is officially charged with murder. Kenya's friends and family are blown away.
Everything is running through my head. Everything is like, why? How come? Why would why would he do this to her?
I'm shocked. It was a disturbing, confusing time. He's still the husband of my niece. And in that moment, you want to believe that there's no way he could have done this.
But as the tawdry details of this case emerge, the blood evidence, the affairs, that shock turns to rage.
I'm literally thinking about it, Kenya, in that moment, and saying to myself, it's going to be okay. Justice, we're going to get justice for you.
But getting justice for Kenya won't be easy. And when the case goes to trial, the defense will play a trump card that will rock the courtroom and beg the question, is the wrong man on trial for Kenya Johnson's murder? Niagara Falls, New York is described as a lover's paradise. But on January 17, 2009, it became the scene to one of a gruesome crime. Kenya Johnson, wife and mother of two beautiful daughters, was stabbed 49 times and nearly decapitated in the kitchen of her apartment.
It was shocking. I mean, you lose people in your life every day, but never would I thought that it would be like this.
After a lengthy investigation, police have charged Kenya's husband, Robert, with the murder. But as the case heads to trial, Robert remains adamant that detectives have charged the wrong man with murder.
He said, I didn't do this to her, Africa. I promise you I didn't. I said, well, Robert, I must be honest with you. I believe you did it. I do. And justice will prevail.
On September 22, 2009, opening arguments begin. Prosecutors start by laying out their theory about what happened. They assert that even though Robert was carrying on an illicit affair of his own, when he discovered his wife was cheating on him and that she no longer planned to join him in Atlanta, he snapped.
What you mean you can't go to Atlanta?
I'm tired.
You tired of what? Cheating on me?
Cheating on you?
Yeah, right. How long you been sleeping with her?
What are you
How long?
She may have said, I am cheating on you and I don't want to be with you, or said something to Bruce's ego and he lost it.
Prosecutors claim that Robert grabbed a set of knives and began viciously stabbing Kenya over and over, 49 times in all, leaving several broken blades in her body.
There's a lot of jealousy, a lot of rage.
Robert Johnson wanted, in effect, revenge for his wife cheating on him and for, in his opinion, not really loving him all these years.
According to prosecutors, once Robert realized Kenya was dead, he headed to the basement and attempted to wash away the blood. While doing so, Robert realized he needed an alibi, so he changed clothes and made a mad dash to the corner barbershop.
It's crazy. You can't possibly be in your right mind to murder someone, clean yourself up, leave the house, leave the person there, and go get a haircut.
After his haircut, Robert returned home, called 911, and then cradled his wife's body in his arms until police and EMTs arrived.
Prosecutor Lisa Berry told the jury he had to come up with an alibi, and he had to come up with one in a hurry.
I believe wholeheartedly that he's done this. It was clear to us more then, as she laid it out to us, exactly kind of what took place.
When it's his turn, Robert's defense attorney, Michael McNellis, argues that the real guilty party is the Niagara Falls police, who in their rush to judgment arrested an innocent man.
The police honed in on Robert Johnson right off the bat and never looked anywhere else.
McNellis also argues that Robert's barbershop alibi is indeed airtight, and that his client never had the opportunity to kill his wife. As proof, they offer the testimony of the barber, Fred Gilmer.
Gilmer said that Johnson arrived in his barbershop and waited 15 minutes and then had about 20 minutes in the chair for the haircut.
The mathematics of the time doesn't comport with Robert being the killer.
Prosecutors counter by asserting the walk from the Johnson residence to the barbershop doesn't take nearly as long as the defense suggests.
The barbershop is only 2 or 3 blocks from the apartment where the Johnsons lived.
But according to prosecutors, more important than a timeline is the fact that Kenya's blood and DNA was found on Robert's clothes and body, as well as in the basement sink.
By the time all the evidence came out, there was no way. Everyone believed that he did it.
Defense attorney McNellis counters that the DNA on Robert's chest and clothes were transferred when he was tearfully cradling his wife's blood-soaked body. He also provides a possible explanation for the evidence found in the downstairs sink basin.
There was the washing machine that was washing right into that sink basin. So as people's clothes are washed, there's traces of DNA that can spill into that sink trap.
That's when defense attorney McNellis drops a forensic bombshell and introduces evidence he feels proves his client's innocence: the socks Robert was wearing the day of the crime.
Among the items of clothing the police took from Robert Johnson was his socks. Those socks were later tested for DNA, and they found a Kenya Johnson's DNA and Robert Johnson's DNA, and the DNA of a third person whom they were unable to identify.
There is a third DNA profile that, to me, was picked up when Robert's walking through the blood.
McNellis contends that the unknown DNA belongs to the real killer, one of the intruders who first attacked Robert months earlier. It's an argument that seems to plant the seed of reasonable doubt.
They did try to paint the picture there could have been a third person there. You want to give everybody the benefit of a doubt.
On October 5th, 2009, both sides rest their case. 3 hours later, the jury announces they've reached a verdict.
Robert had no emotion. He just sat there.
I really believe that Robert's going to get his just due in the end.
The 4 men and 8 women find Robert Johnson guilty of first-degree murder.
It was like this sigh of relief came over me. He's gonna go to jail now. He's gonna get, what he deserves.
We may not ever have a Kenya with us again, but at least we have justice for her murder.
The judge gives Robert a sentence of 25 years to life. But before Kenya's family can feel even an ounce of victory, the case is rocked by another bombshell. One that suggests the guilty verdict just handed down is far from a sure thing. The roller coaster trial of Robert Johnson for the murder of his wife Kenya has just ended with a guilty verdict and a sentence of 25 years to life.
So we're standing there and we're listening, and when we hear that verdict come back as guilty, part of you wants to rejoice because he is found guilty. Justice is being served.
But the celebration is short-lived. Not long after the verdict is read, Robert's defense attorney, Michael McNellis, files an appeal, claiming he now has proof that his client is innocent.
McNellis said that he had an affidavit from a teenager named Robert Thousand, who had been an inmate in the Niagara County Jail. Thousand wrote in his affidavit that another inmate by the name of Thomas Pryor had confessed to killing a Kenya Johnson.
Moreover, Thomas Pryor is revealed to have been one of the suspects initially investigated in the home invasion that occurred at the Johnson residence 3 months prior to the murder.
I asked the judge basically to throw out the verdict, reopen the case and start all over.
Kenya's family is in utter disbelief.
I don't know really how to respond, and so I'm shocked, I'm shocked.
On February 17, 2010, the judge calls a special hearing to determine if Robert Thousand is a credible witness.
He took the stand and verified everything that he said in the letter. He maintained all the way through that Thomas Pryor's words were that Thomas Pryor went in and committed the crime.
But when pressed, Robert Thousand is unable to provide any additional details about Thomas Pryor or the murder of Kenya Johnson. In short, the judge isn't buying it.
The judge didn't believe that Robert Thousand's information was credible. That was his assessment.
The judge said both his body language and his intonation gave him away as a liar.
On May 22, 2010, the court upholds Robert Johnson's guilty verdict and his sentence of 25 years to life. For Kenya's family, it's a bittersweet victory.
My friend's gone. Africa's sister's gone. Kofi's sister's gone.
And once the allegations of illicit engagements and extramarital affairs are stripped away, one simple tragedy remains. A single vicious attack carried out in a fit of rage robbed two young girls of both their parents.
Children are probably hurt the most because now they don't have their mother or their father.
It's terrible. And it doesn't matter how, it could be 10 years from now and it'll be terrible. What can you do? Nothing. Nothing at all.
Someone Arthur knew, perhaps even trusted. Someone close enough to get behind him, shoot him in the back of the head, execution style, and leave no trace of a struggle besides the initial shot. Something, clearly, had led this brutal violence to his doorstep. Who are you, Arthur Hayes? And why would somebody want to remove you from this earth? Chapter 3. Family Secrets. Leaving the house for a moment, the crime scene secured and forensic teams now meticulously at work. Inside, Alana and I walked the perimeter of the property. The residential cameras, the ever-present eyes of modern suburbia, were a priority. We hoped a neighbor's lens might have caught a glimpse of someone coming or going during the crucial window of time. I would leave a business card, a polite request for footage, at any house displaying a surveillance camera. "Hey Max, check this out," Alana called, her voice sharp with discovery. She pointed towards a dense patch of overgrown shrubs along the back fence. Wedged beneath them, almost deliberately concealed, was a backpack. I muttered, carefully extracting it with gloved hands. Inside, a familiar jumble of items. Some clothes, a wallet, and a small baggie containing what appeared to be marijuana and a pipe. The wallet, Alana started, pulling out a California driver's license. My mind immediately began to spin through new scenarios. Jackson, Arthur's stepson, had brought an element of danger into the Hayes family home. Could this be a drug deal gone sideways, spilling into tragedy? It was clear that the immediate scene offered little more. The most vital information would come from those who knew Arthur best, his family, and they, heartbroken and terrified, were currently at the hospital, at Arthur's bedside. A breathing tube snaked from his mouth, silently working to keep his lungs alive. His children, Amelia and Liam, looked shocked. I just sat there and held my dad's hand for a few minutes, she'd recall later, her voice thick with pain. I just kept playing it over in my mind, whether he was actually going to come home to us. Every little girl wants her dad to come home. He was, effectively, a deceased man living on borrowed time. This was now, without a doubt, a homicide investigation. Eleanor Vance, the person closest to the victim, emotionally and physically, she was also the first to encounter the scene, after her children. We found Eleanor in a quiet waiting room, her eyes swollen from crying, her children clinging to her. Her voice was raspy, but she spoke. My dad was a workaholic, Amira would add. Later, supported my mom and 5 kids. Arthur Hayes, by all accounts, was a man who tried his hardest to carve out an honest living, to keep his kids on track in a community fraught with perilous influences. He was a protector. My dad did not like any use of drugs. Marijuana was not something he was okay with having in the house, or around us kids. This detail resonated sharply with the backpack found in the yard. Kathleen Eleanor, what can you tell us about your relationship with Arthur? I asked gently, navigating the delicate space between empathy and investigation, and the family dynamic. We know about Jackson, his son, and the younger children. Jackson was Arthur's oldest son, and Eleanor was his stepmother. Arthur and we were having marital problems. She admitted they were estranged, sleeping in separate rooms, and had been living in a state of carefully choreographed separation, while they planned for a divorce. I hate to say this, she began, her voice brittle with bitterness, but he was just not a great husband. Eleanor then launched into a narrative that painted Arthur as a lech, constantly cheating, with all these women on the side. It opened a new door of possibilities. Could this have been a crime of passion, a jealous partner, or scorned lover? After taking a statement from Eleanor, We moved to Jackson Hayes, the 21-year-old son, Arthur's elder. Jackson was a slight, unassuming kid. He spoke in a soft, almost lilting cadence, rarely making eye contact, his body language suggesting a lack of. I immediately got the impression he wasn't the sharpest knife in the drawer. Whatever you need. We confronted him about the backpack in the backyard. Jackson immediately admitted, almost without prompting. Yeah, I used marijuana. I leave it outside the house so I don't have a confrontation with my dad. He confessed to a strained relationship with Arthur, but said he got along much better with Eleanor. Jackson, do you owe people money for drugs or anything like that? I asked, looking for any link to violence or a drug debt. No, I just smoke every now and then. That's all. His marijuana use seemed low level. So, can you tell us what you were up to this afternoon, Jackson? He provided a fairly innocuous account. He was at a friend's house, Owen, just down the street, playing video games. A typical routine. He had been there with two buddies for the entire evening, he claimed, but had left for a short time to return the family car. Arthur, he explained, would get upset when I drove at night, so I had to bring the car back. Did you see your dad when you brought the car back? Alana asked. No, Jackson said quickly. I parked a block away and then walked back to my friend's house, because I knew that if Dad saw me, he would have made me come into the house. I get that, Jackson, I said, with a nod. My old man was strict too. We'll let you go on and get out of here for now. Okay. We had failed to get anywhere concrete with the family regarding the shooting. Eleanor had her issues with Arthur, but an ironclad alibi, confirmed by the presence of her children. Jackson's low-level drug use and casual alibi seemed harmless enough. We needed a new direction. We would go back outside. They were our next best bet. Chapter 4. The $1 Million Motive. I began to canvass the neighborhood around Arthur Hayes' home. Officer Miller had left notes, and I'd followed up on every one, meticulously searching for additional cameras. Each doorbell camera, each security system, represented a potential witness, a silent observer that could break the case wide open. I saw it often. The world, increasingly, was under surveillance by the government, by your neighbors, by ubiquitous digital eyes. Walking that evening, as twilight cast long shadows across manicured lawns, I found a few more homes that appeared to have active video surveillance. When I saw a camera, I would stop, jot down my name and number on a business card, and leave it on the door, accompanied by a polite note. Please call me. I'd like to see your footage regarding an incident at Cypress Lane. The following day, a major breakthrough arrived from the forensics lab. The ballistic report for the recovered slug, the fragment pulled from Arthur's shirt, was ready. I took the call from the technician. Max, we got really lucky here. The projectile is a .22 caliber long rifle round, and our expert was able to link it to a very specific, very unusual gun, an H&R 999 revolver. My brow furrowed. An H&R model 999. That's an antique, isn't it? The specific striations on the slug, our expert is unequivocal. This bullet was fired from a Harrington and Richardson 999 revolver, and from no other gun. That's an interesting piece of information, Max. Interesting was an understatement. To have the specific make and model of the murder weapon was an incredible stroke of luck, particularly given its rare and antiquated nature. It wasn't a common firearm, which meant tracing it could be harder, but also, if found, it would be almost definitive. As I pondered this new development, another call came in, this time from St. Jude's Medical Center. It was Ms. Davies, a hospital advocate working with Arthur's family. Her voice was cautious, laced with concern. Detective Riley, I need to share something with you, confidentially, about the Hayes family, Ms. Davies began. I have some concerns regarding Eleanor Vance. She's been overly interested in Arthur's life insurance policy, specifically, the value. My attention sharpened instantly. Ms. Davies, what kind of value are we talking about? The policy, she informed me, her voice lowering slightly, has a value of $1 million. A chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning ran down my spine. $1 million. That certainly gave someone a million reasons to remove Mr. Hayes from this mortal coil. This conversation prompted a more intensive deep dive into the lives of Eleanor and Arthur. I remembered Eleanor's initial narrative, painting Arthur as a philanderer. It was time to look closer at that claim, and at her. My next step was to contact Arthur's longtime colleague, Marcus Thorne, a man who had known Arthur 4 years from their time at the telecommunications company. Marcus proved a wealth of information, shattering Eleanor's carefully constructed image. Arthur was a good man, Max, Marcus began, his voice laced with genuine sorrow. A little naive, perhaps, but good-hearted, always a little too willing to give Eleanor the benefit of the doubt. Marcus then began to unravel a story of betrayal and manipulation that turned Eleanor's initial portrayal of Arthur on its head. Kathleen, Eleanor, she's been bleeding Arthur dry for a decade, Marcus revealed, the words echoing with bitter truth. Constantly running up debts, manipulating situations, and Arthur was still supporting her, paying all her bills, living under his roof while they were estranged. It painted Eleanor Vance in a stark, horrifying new light. She wasn't the innocent victim of a philandering husband, quite the opposite. Arthur, it seemed, was the long-suffering spouse, constantly walked over, perpetually paying for Eleanor's profligate lifestyle and serial infidelity. Eleanor's portrayal of Arthur as a lech was a masterful projection, designed to divert suspicion from herself. I slammed my fist softly on the desk, the pieces starting to form a more sinister picture. Yeah, I think we need to talk to Eleanor again. Her motive, clear and compelling, was $1 million. But the most gut-wrenching moment arrived on June 30th. The medical staff in the ICU ward, after extensive tests and painful consultations, officially declared Arthur Hayes effectively brain dead. His body, kept alive by machines, had reached its inevitable end. The decision fell to Eleanor Vance, as his next of kin. Amira, Arthur's daughter, shared the devastating moment with us. I am racking my brain on what to do. But my mom, sweetie, it's time. She signed the papers to pull the plug. Eleanor Vance made the decision to end Arthur Hayes' life. Legally, she was within her rights. It was a mercy, ostensibly, to stop his prolonged suffering. But for a homicide detective, the question gnawed. Was she truly motivated by compassion, or by the allure of $1 million in her future? I brought Eleanor back into the precinct for a follow-up interview, the quiet room suddenly heavy with unspoken accusation. At that point, I reflected. I was really looking at Eleanor as one of the main suspects. I confronted her delicately at first, then more directly, about the $1 million life insurance policy, about the nature of her and Arthur's relationship as described by Marcus Thorne. Eleanor, Alana said, her voice cutting through the denials, would you mind if we took a look at your phone? We're investigating Arthur's death, and we're simply looking for any evidence that might shed light on this murder. She still wanted to maintain that facade of the grieving, helpful wife, pushing away any implication of guilt. We took her phone, excusing her from the room, promising to return it shortly. Alana and I immediately dove into its digital labyrinth. We scrolled through messages, call logs, photos. Instantly, we hit pay dirt. Here, Max, Alana murmured, her finger on the screen. She's having an affair. Look at this thread. It's obvious. This is not just a platonic relationship. The messages were explicit, undeniable proof of infidelity. Interesting, yes, but not direct evidence of murder. Then, Alana navigated to the phone's search history. When it comes to your search history, I explained to her, and now, to you, it's going to show what you truly want in life. It's going to show your plans, your hidden desires. Alana's eyes widened. Max, look at this. Beneficiary of life insurance policy spouse, life insurance payout murder. These searches dated back approximately 3 weeks before Arthur was shot. A clear, undeniable, and extremely strong interest in the money tied to Arthur's death. It starts to make it look like Eleanor could have a very strong financial motive to be a part of this murder. I stated, the words, a grim realization. However, a critical piece of the puzzle still held. Eleanor's alibi. When asked where she was on the day Arthur was shot, she had provided irrefutable receipts, witness confirmations. She had been with her children, shopping and running errands in various parts of the city. There's no way in any sense of the imagination, I conceded, that she could have possibly pulled the trigger unless she's got an identical twin running around somewhere. The implication, horrifying yet logical, hung in the air. Here's a thought. Someone else was in on it, like the guy she's having an affair with. Maybe. But a new, far more unsettling possibility began to emerge. Who would benefit most from an insurance payout? Alana mused. Besides the estranged wife, the children. She looked at me, a dawning horror in her eyes. Yet, the idea, once planted, refused to die. Alana and I discussed that there could be a scenario, I acknowledged, my voice grim, in which Eleanor and Jackson had worked together on this. So what's going on here, Jackson? I wondered aloud. We were about to find out. Chapter 5. The Confused Alibi. We brought Jackson Hayes back in for a second interview, ostensibly to clarify minor points in his original statement. He still exuded that same unassuming, almost childlike demeanor, but this time, under the quiet, persistent pressure, the cracks in his narrative began to show. Jackson, we just want to go over what you were doing the night your father was murdered, Alana began, her tone soft, The problem started almost immediately. During his first interview, Jackson had given a coherent, if brief, timeline. Now, he began adding convoluted details, fabricating elements of his whereabouts. I went to Apex Mart, just down the street, he mumbled, avoiding eye contact. I had to pick up some things. What things, Jackson? I pressed gently, my voice calm. A huge box of condoms. Yeah, I needed those. Alana and I exchanged a quick, almost imperceptible glance. His wallet, containing his ID, and, presumably, his money, had been found abandoned in the backyard. So you went for condoms, Jackson? With what money? I asked. Your wallet was in the backyard. Jackson stammered, his facade beginning to crumble. I just got a... His words trailed off. This was it. He was visibly making things up on the fly, desperate to fill in the holes in his story. When you start making changes, my boy, I knew you're digging yourself a grave. It was a classic tell, a sign of a narrative constructed from lies, unable to withstand the slightest scrutiny. This chipping away, this relentless pursuit of inconsistencies, was a cornerstone of my interview tactics. I would not leave a subject alone if I sensed a lie. Then, out of nowhere, almost as an afterthought, Jackson added, "Oh," and I exited out of the store on the side that has the relay kiosk on that side. Alana's head snapped up. Her eyes met mine, a flash of pure recognition. Having worked property crime, she instantly knew what a relay kiosk was, an unmanned vending machine where you could sell your old cell phones for cash. A lot of times, she'd explain later, when people have their phones stolen, or want to dispose of a phone without being traced, it ends up in these kiosks. Why would you randomly say that, Jackson? I asked, leaning forward, my voice losing some of its earlier gentleness. That you exited the store on the side that has the relay kiosk. Jackson shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact. He was cornered. I just stopped there for a few things. You know, when I was out that evening. Did you get some cash, too, Jackson? Alana chimed in, her voice now sharp, out of a cell phone machine. The look on his face was like a cornered cat's, caught in the headlights. Panic flared in his eyes. No, I don't have a cell phone. I lost it, weeks ago. My suspicion solidified. He lost his phone. What if he needed to lose that phone? What better place to do it, anonymously, for cash, than a relay kiosk? This was a monumental lie, one we could potentially verify. Jackson, I said, my voice hardening, if we find out you're lying to us, things are going to get very bad for you. Officer, show him out. Scott left, thinking he had managed to evade our questions, but the seeds of his undoing had just been sown. We now had a confused, altered alibi for the son. We had a wife, Eleanor, with an ironclad alibi but $1 million motive, and a series of damning cell phone searches. The complex web of family betrayal began to take shape. But my immediate focus was now squarely on that relay kiosk. Alana, with her property crime expertise, was the perfect person to lead the charge. She knew the ins and outs of these machines. There are all these little hidden cameras all over the thing, she explained. They take pictures of you, video of you, throughout the entirety of your transaction. It's a goldmine of evidence, if the timing is right. Alana made the call to the relay kiosk's corporate office. To our immense relief, they were incredibly cooperative, understanding the gravity of the homicide investigation. Within an hour, they had provided her with video footage corresponding to the evening Arthur Hayes was shot. We reviewed the tape, our eyes fixed on the screen, and there he was. Clear as day, Jackson Hayes. It was approximately 5 or 6 hours before his father got murdered, Alana noted, her finger pointing at the screen. Jackson stood before the kiosk, Undeniable proof of his lie. He's at the kiosk, selling this phone that he said doesn't exist, using an ID that he said he didn't have with him. That was the undeniable aha moment. A wave of exhilaration mixed with grim satisfaction washed over us. Jackson Hayes is a liar, and we can prove it, I said, the words heavy with implication. Why is he lying? That phoner is probably going to tell us why he's lying. We didn't waste a second. We obtained a warrant to access the relay kiosk itself, not just its surveillance. Alana and I raced to the Apex Mart, the kiosk gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights of the store. Wouldn't it be nice? As they say in the song, Alana murmured, a rare smile gracing her lips, to find Jackson's phone in that machine. The relay kiosk representative had given Alana a secret sequence of buttons to press, hidden almost imperceptibly around its facade. With a quiet whir and a soft clunk, the machine popped open, revealing a bottom bin filled with a veritable mountain of discarded cell phones. We have just like a mountain of cell phones down here, Alana explained, pulling out a pair of gloves. Now, we go through every single one, checking the make and model against what we know Jackson had. It's a needle in a haystack, but we have to be meticulous. I watched, a knot of nervous anticipation in my stomach. I was nervous, Max, because I didn't want us to take this drive out here, and then it not be there. The exact model. She held up a sleek, black smartphone. Nice job, Alana, I said, genuine pride in my voice. Alana raced back to the station, her new treasure clutched securely. Back at the precinct, she performed her magic. Detective Ramirez was, by now, a resident cell phone guru. She carefully connected the device to our forensic software, initiating the meticulous data extraction process. Our software was cutting edge, designed to bypass passwords, recover deleted content, and perform comprehensive keyword searches across everything. Google searches, text messages, app data. It would expose the device's entire digital history. As Alana initiated the process, the screen filling with lines of code, a wave of anticipation settled over us. This was it. The very first keyword search Alana typed in, leveraging the earlier ballistic report. When the results populated, Alana leaned back in her chair, a slow, grim smile spreading across her face. Hundreds upon hundreds of searches exploded across the screen. Jackson Hayes, the unassuming, seemingly dim-witted kid, had been meticulously researching his father's murder weapon. Jackson Eastman is searching for Harrington and Richardson .22 revolvers in gun auction site, Alana explained, scrolling rapidly. It just wasn't that Jackson was searching about guns, or just searching about ammo. For weeks, Jackson Eastman was searching the exact ammo and the exact gun that killed his father. The chilling pre-planning was undeniable. Then, Alana performed another keyword search. The results, again, exploded across the screen, a tidal wave of depravity, hundreds of searches, image queries, and forum posts related to incestuous pornography, specifically about having sex with your stepmother. The true horror of Jackson Hayes' twisted psyche unfurled before us. We believed, and we had evidence from his phone, that Jackson was in love with his stepmother. He was very affectionate to her. He even had some of her photos on his own phone that Eleanor had sent to her lover, that he must have stolen or received through some means. The pieces of the final, sickening motive clicked into place. Jackson Hayes had a deep, perverse sexual fantasy about his stepmother, Eleanor. A fantasy so powerful, so distorted, that it drove him to the unimaginable. That was like one of those true jaw-dropping moments, Alana murmured, her voice grim, because I believe that he got it in his head that if Dad was eliminated, that they would have had his life insurance payout, that $1 million. And that, in his twisted mind, would have made him one step closer to fulfilling whatever dark, depraved fantasy he had about his stepmother. The depth of his depravity was staggering. It wasn't just the murder, it was the motive, woven from greed, lust, and betrayal, a venomous tapestry of ultimate evil. Chapter 6. The Unraveling. With Jackson Hayes' digital confessions screaming from his recovered phone, our focus sharpened back to his alibi, particularly the mysterious 45-minute gap in his timeline. His initial story was that he left his friend Owen's house briefly to return the family car, parking a block away and walking back immediately to avoid his father. He'd made it sound like a quick 10-minute errand. But he was gone for like a 45-minute period. Are you sure? Yeah, almost positive. Long enough for us to start wondering where he'd gone. 45 minutes, not 10. What was Jackson doing for those crucial 45 minutes? His friend's house was within easy walking distance of his own. That gap, once a mere anomaly, now screamed opportunity. Could it be that he was executing his own father? Just as I was considering this, the call came in. The neighbor who had the surveillance camera covering the street in front of the Hayes' home had finally reviewed their footage. It had taken a while, navigating technical difficulties and busy schedules, but the payoff was immense. The video footage, crisp and unambiguous, displayed a scene that contradicted every word Jackson had uttered. At 8:53 p.m. on June 25th, Jackson's car pulled up to the curb. He exited the driver's seat, just as he'd said. But instead of walking west back towards his friend Owen's house, the footage clearly showed him turning east, heading directly back home, the very home where his father was shot. He had explicitly told us, "I didn't want to be seen by my dad, because he would have made me stay in for the night." And here he was, on irrefutable surveillance, doing the exact thing he said he didn't do, a chilling confirmation of his deceit. A short time later, he reappeared in the frame, coming from the direction of his own home. He walked to the trunk of his car, quickly opening it, placing something inside. We believed it was the murder weapon, concealed, secured. That was the moment when everything else just fell off to the side, and we knew Jackson was our shooter. It was time. I called Jackson Hayes in for another interview. We needed a statement, a confession, even if it was just the final, crushing weight on the mountain of evidence. He walked into that interview room, oblivious to the fact that we had uncovered every one of his secrets, every one of his heinous searches. "Jackson," I began, my voice even, calm. "You need to come clean. I like you, Jackson, and I know that you feel the best when you're being honest. It's not forced. You don't have to think about it." And then, I got very confrontational with him. "Tell me about those searches." Alana placed a stack of printouts on the table, pages and pages of search history, .22 pistols, ammunition, the ballistics of bullets on the human body. Jackson looked down at the paper, his face draining of color. He let out a tiny, meek whisper, almost inaudible. "I came from my phone." "Your phone?" "Yes, Jackson, your phone." It was classic interrogation. Every time he told a lie, his body language became smaller, his voice grew weaker. He denied the ammo searches and the gun searches at first, but he was disturbingly upfront about the incestuous pornography. "These are very specific," Alana emphasized, pointing at graphic search terms. "These are not just random clicks." I just kept chipping away, his feeble attempts to create new storylines on the spot crumbling under the weight of the undeniable. "That's not me," he'd insist, weakly. Finally, I delivered the cold, hard truth. "I know that you murdered your father, Jackson, and here is all the evidence to prove it." A long, agonizing pause hung in the air, thick with unspoken guilt and desperate denial. Then, Jackson Hayes finally looked up, his eyes meeting mine. "I need a lawyer," he said, his voice flat, defeated. He wouldn't confess, but we had what we needed. He had been told from the beginning, "You're free to leave at any time." Jackson Hayes had walked out of previous interviews hoping everything would just disappear. The difference this time was stark. When everything was said and done, Jackson Hayes would be the one to disappear into a prison cell. Alana and I had the undeniable evidence required to pursue Jackson for the murder of his father. We applied for, and quickly received, a warrant for his arrest. It was time to bring him in for good. Chapter 7. Unimaginable Betrayal. As I assembled an arrest team to apprehend Jackson Hayes at his home, the gravity of the situation weighed heavily. Deploying a full tactical team, in full gear, to a family residence was always a high-risk endeavor. You're dealing with volatile emotions, with people inside a house who could react unpredictably. Things could go bad, very quickly. We arrived at the familiar address on Cypress Lane in the dead of night, the silence of the neighborhood broken only by the hushed commands over our radios. The house, which had once presented a facade of domestic tranquility, now seemed to exhale a chilling sense of dread. "Entry team, execute," I radioed, once positions were secured. The sharp, concussive banging on the front door resonated through the pre-dawn quiet. Inside, Eleanor Vance, jolted awake by the sudden commotion, stumbled into the living room, Amira beside her. "I'll get it," Amira murmured sleepily. She opened the door an inch, barely enough to peer out, when the tactical team surged forward, pushing inward, a flurry of armed officers, shields, and shouted commands. Eleanor and Amira were immediately pushed to the side, against a wall. Kathleen, where Scott, the lead officer's voice was clipped, urgent. Jackson, already awake and having heard the commotion, stood up calmly from the sofa in the living room. He held his hands up, a strange resignation on his face. I'm right here. He offered no resistance. Officers moved swiftly, reading him his rights, securing him in handcuffs. Jackson Hayes, you're under arrest for the murder of Arthur Carl Hayes III. Amira later recounted the moment, the words ringing with disbelieving pain. I didn't know how to react. I'm thinking, they've got to be wrong. It's not possible that Scott would do this to us. It's not possible for Scott to have shot our own dad. But when it comes to murder, my dear, nothing is impossible. Jackson went willingly, almost complacently, led out into the blinding glare of the tactical lights. As he was secured in the patrol car, I turned to Eleanor, whose face was a mask of shock and bewilderment, her stepson, a father figure taken. Eleanor, I said, my voice quiet, deliberate, delivering the final, devastating truth. You know he's in love with you, right? I told Eleanor. He murdered his own father, thinking that you two were going to run off into the sunset, thinking that the $1 million would seal your twisted bond. The look on her face was bizarre, not shock, not grief, not even revulsion, but almost a flicker of perverse pride. Wow, did he really say that about me? That detached, almost self-absorbed reaction spoke volumes. It solidified the insidious nature of their bond, or rather, his deranged perception of it. She might not have been complicit in the killing, but she certainly fueled the fire of his obsession. Based on all the evidence, the timeline, the ballistics, the DNA, the surveillance footage, and the phone records, Alana and I reconstructed the sequence of events as we believed them to have transpired. On the evening of June 25, 2016, Jackson Hayes parked his car on the next street over, out of sight. He then casually walked to his house, entering through the garage. It was there he was met or confronted by his father, Arthur. Are you high again, Jackson? No. Don't lie to me. If I catch you doing drugs again, you are out of here. Do you understand me? Arthur, ever the protective, moralistic father, had likely found or suspected his son's marijuana use, unleashing a torrent of long-simmering resentment and frustration. We believe Arthur then turned and walked back into his kitchen, perhaps heading for a drink of water, or simply disengaging from the argument, dismissing his son's aggression as mere petulance. He knew Jackson, but he didn't see the hidden monster. He didn't perceive the coiled fury of a depraved mind fueled by an incestuous fantasy and the promise of $1 million. He didn't see Jackson as a threat. But Jackson had waited for his opportunity. When Arthur walked toward the kitchen, his back exposed, Jackson came up behind him. A .22 caliber Harrington and Richardson revolver Vera gun he had, meticulously researched for weeks, clutched in his hand. Jackson fired that weapon, and one of the small, deadly projectiles hit Arthur directly in the back of the head. Immediately after the shot, based on the neighbor's surveillance footage, Jackson ran out of the house, retracing his steps. He stopped briefly at his car, opening the trunk. We believed he quickly broke open the antiquated top of that revolver to discard the spent casings. If done too fast, under duress, the casings would fly everywhere. One of them, a crucial piece of the puzzle, would later be found in the spare tire area of that very car during forensic examination. This was how Alana and I believed the incident transpired. When Jackson Hayes was brought to trial, the evidence painstakingly gathered and presented painted an overwhelming picture. The cold, calculating nature of his preparation, the methodical execution, the attempted and the chilling motive of sexual obsession and greed. The jury, after careful deliberation, found Jackson Hayes guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of the murder of his father. As a result of that finding, the judge sentenced Jackson Hayes to 55 years to life in a California penal system for this horrific matter. Eleanor Vance, despite her questionable morals and clear financial motive, was never arrested or charged. There was simply no direct evidence, beyond her searches and her affair, that unequivocally linked her to the actual murder or the conspiracy to commit it. As for the insurance money, it was ultimately split equally between Arthur Hayes' surviving, innocent children, legally barring the murderous one from receiving any payout. The outcome offered a stark, agonizing reminder of the depths of human depravity. I could not conceive of that type of violence, Amara would lament. First, Jackson to pull a trigger. Killing his father. It was not something that was anywhere in my imagination. For him to take our father away from us, it's a horrid thing. Her grief was a raw wound, one that would never truly heal. Over those weeks investigating Arthur Hayes' murder, I came to truly see what a good-hearted, if sometimes flawed and overly trusting, man he was. He was a father, a provider, a man trying to do his best, and I was proud to play a part in getting justice for Arthur Hayes. Arthur Hayes had brought Jackson into the world, and 21 years later, Jackson brutally took Arthur out of it. Something profoundly, terrifyingly wrong with that. But then, murder always is. Part 2. The Cold Current. The Murder of Beatrice Callahan. Chapter 1. The Still Waters of Serenity Stream. The late afternoon sun slanted through the dense canopies of maple and oak, painting dappled gold across the winding paths of Maplewood Hollow, Connecticut. It was 3 o'clock on a warm Monday, June 1st, 1998, and the bell from Maplewood High had just chimed, releasing a torrent of eager students. They were not, however, headed straight home. The allure of Serenity Stream Falls, a local hangout spot where the swift current tumbled over ancient rock formations into a deep, cool pool, was too strong to resist. Laughter and excited chatter echoed through the woods as they made their way down the familiar, winding trail. "I can't believe it's only Monday," one groaned, as they emerged from the trees onto the small, pebbled shore by the water's edge. Their voices died in their throats, their youthful exuberance replaced by a sudden, chilling silence. Something was in the water. At first, it was just a dark, indistinct shape, partially submerged, bobbing gently in the slow current near the deeper part of the pool. They squinted, nudging each other, their curiosity tinged with apprehension. As they ventured closer, the shape slowly, horribly, began to resolve itself. The grayish blue of clothing, the unnatural stillness, and then, the unmistakable, terrifying outline of a human form. It was the body of a woman, face down in the frigid water, and her hands were tied behind her back. My name is Detective Sergeant David Sterling, and in I was the investigative sergeant with the East Hampton, the Maplewood Hollow Police Department. A quiet, unassuming community nestled in the heart of Connecticut. Maplewood Hollow was a sleepy bedroom town, known more for its quaint village green and historical homes than for violent crime. We hadn't had a homicide in nearly 10 years. I was enjoying a rare day off, driving my 3 children to swim practice, when my pager, a relic of an era now receding into history, chirped insistently. The display showed the department's number. I knew that distinctive page, followed by the urgency in the dispatcher's voice, was always a summons to the grim realities of my profession. I dropped off the kids, offered a quick, reassuring hug, and sped towards the station, my mind racing through the potential scenarios. A victim found in a remote area in Maplewood Hollow was the terse message awaiting me. My immediate reaction was a whirlwind of questions. A homicide, here, in Maplewood Hollow. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd always longed to be involved in the big one, the case that truly challenged every ounce of my experience. I truly had no idea what horrors lay ahead. When I arrived, Sergeant Eva Russo, a veteran patrol supervisor, had already secured the scene with a tight perimeter. Several patrol officers stood guard, their faces grim, a silent testament to the horror they'd discovered. The location itself was starkly beautiful, a place of serene, untamed wilderness. A pristine stream ran through a steep ravine, culminating in a small, picturesque waterfall known as Serenity Stream Falls. It was one of those places only locals knew, tucked away down an obscure, winding road that casual passers-by would never find. "David, what do we have?" I asked Sergeant Russo, my voice low. "A couple of kids throwing rocks from the bridge," she explained, gesturing towards the small, stone bridge spanning the gorge, "and they saw something in the water." Officer Thomas Bell, a younger officer who'd been the first to respond, approached me, his face pale beneath his cap. "Officer Bell, what's known so far?" "Bodies still in the water," Sergeant Sterling Beale reported, his voice tight. I looked down over the bridge and saw a woman's body, face down in the stream, obviously motionless, obviously deceased. It was almost surreal, like something out of an Alfred Hitchcock movie. I leaned over the railing of the bridge, my gaze following Bell's. The sight was indeed unsettling. The placid surface of the stream belied the horror beneath, the dark shape a grim punctuation mark in the pristine landscape. We immediately summoned the State Police Major Crime Squad for evidence processing. Their crime scene technicians were a crack team, experts in their field, and they quickly took charge of securing and recovering any potential evidence from the remote, challenging terrain. The scene began to hum with the quiet, methodical activity of forensic science. Almost immediately, vital clues began to emerge. A careful search of the immediate area revealed sections of duct tape, a common tool for abduction scattered near the water's edge. Further scrutiny revealed faint but unmistakable drag marks leading from the paved path down to the very spot where the body had been discovered. And just beyond the clearing, barely visible in the soft earth, were the faint imprints of tire tracks, distinct patterns indicating a vehicle had parked, unloaded its gruesome cargo. The implications were chillingly clear. This was a dump site, not the actual crime scene. The murder had occurred elsewhere, its final act of desecration here. We knew where it ended, submerged in 3 feet of frigid water, but the critical question of where it began remained shrouded in mystery. "Okay, let's turn her over," I directed, my voice cutting through the quiet efficiency. The medical examiner, Dr. Angela Chun, a woman with a no-nonsense demeanor and a wealth of experience, arrived and carefully supervised the painstaking process of removing the body from the water and gently turning it over. The water, clear and cold, cascaded off the lifeless form. And as soon as her face was revealed, my breath hitched. Recognition, cold and immediate, washed over me. I know her," I stated, a grim knot forming in my stomach. The victim, far from being an unknown, was a familiar face in our small town, someone the community knew and respected. She had been reported missing just that very morning. The layers of the mystery deepened. Officer Bell, still absorbing the shock of the identification, relayed another piece of the unfolding puzzle. A quick registration check had confirmed the vehicle was registered to Beatrice Hatch. He'd gained entry, finding B's purse undisturbed on the front seat, containing currency, her ID, credit cards. Nothing taken, nothing rifled through. He'd even found wet clothing in a washing machine inside the laundromat, almost certainly belonging to B. "Where is she?" he had asked himself then, his initial concern now transforming into full-blown dread. B would never leave her dog, especially for such an extended period. Something was profoundly wrong. And now, all those unspoken fears had materialized into this grim tableau by Serenity Stream Falls. "I don't think I can tell you much more until we conduct an autopsy," Dr. Chun informed me, her voice devoid of emotion. "There are no apparent gunshot wounds, no visible stab wounds on the body. However, she's been submerged in very cold water for hours, which has a tendency to close and conceal openings in the skin. We're only looking at what we can see here. Method of death is yet to be determined, but the ligature marks from the duct tape are clearly visible. The pieces were beginning to coalesce, forming a brutal, undeniable picture. A beloved member of the community, meticulously cared for, abducted, and then dumped like refuse. The peaceful facade of Maplewood Hollow had been savagely ripped away. Chapter 2: A Small Town's Monster. The first painful task after identification was always the notification. This was more than just a duty. It was a deeply emotional and personal wrench. Delivering news that their beloved mother had been found murdered, treated with such brutal disregard, was a moment that seared itself into my memory. "I just don't understand why anyone would do this to her," Grace sobbed, her voice thick with pain and confusion. Lily echoed her sister's anguish. "I couldn't believe it, and especially the way they found her. Just the way she was treated. It was awful." I spoke to B's friends, seeking to build a comprehensive picture of the victim, to find any enemies, any shadows in her bright life. Each person offered the same refrain. B was a sweet, lovely, wonderful, warm, and loving person. She would give you the most amazing hugs you could possibly imagine. One friend recounted, tears welling in her eyes. Your whole world felt safe when B hugged you. B was employed as a home health aide, working for a local agency. She was, in essence, a caregiver, a person whose life was dedicated to doing something for someone else, always putting herself aside for others. You don't find people like that anymore. Another friend sighed. You just don't. Who could possibly do this to such a woman? That question became my driving obsession. I was charged with finding the answer. Did she have a boyfriend? Sergeant Sterling? Was she dating anybody? Officer Bell, still new to homicide's grim realities, asked. She's been seeing a guy named Mark Jenkins, one friend reluctantly revealed. Said they had gone out on a date or two. He seemed to like her a lot. Mark Jenkins. He was a natural first person of interest. We brought him in for an interview, and he came in willingly, though clearly shaken by the news of B's death. How long have you and B been seeing each other, Mr. J? I asked. We'd just started to get to know each other, he explained, his voice gentle. I really liked her. She saw me as a friend. He spoke of B with genuine affection and respect. Mr. Jenkins, you may not see it this way, I said, laying out the uncomfortable truth, but as a homicide detective, I have to see you as a potential suspect. I needed his movements during the crucial time frame of the murder. I was wondering where you were on the night of May 31st, into the early morning of June 1st. Mark immediately provided a clear, almost foolproof alibi. I was away for a few days, at a bowling tournament. Not only did he have lots of witnesses, but several of them were off-duty officers from our own department, participating in the same league. He was unequivocally ruled out as a suspect. No bad vibes from Mark at all. He was simply a grieving friend. Did anybody tell you guys about the guy who was spying on B? One of B's neighbors whispered to Officer Bell during a subsequent canvass. Interesting. Very interesting. B, it turned out, had been worried about a man appearing at her apartment window, peering in. These unsettling occurrences made her uncomfortable, to the point where she was looking for another apartment. Mr. Peeping Tom. Someone of interest. Finally, we went back to B's apartment building, a modest low-rise complex, and began speaking to all the residents. Did you, by chance, ever hear anything about someone spying on B, or looking through her windows? I asked, seeking confirmation of the rumor. None of the residents seemed to have any knowledge of a peeping Tom until we encountered a woman in a ground-floor apartment. Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about, she said, her voice dropping. That was my son, Thomas Miller, but it was all just a big misunderstanding. She, of course, fiercely denied that her son could have any involvement or responsibility in doing anything harmful to B. Eddie's a good boy, she insisted. Would it be possible for us to speak with Thomas? I asked. Sure can, she replied, a faint note of triumph in her voice. Just go down to the county jail where you people locked him up. Thomas Miller, we quickly confirmed, was a local petty criminal, currently locked up, serving a sentence for a small-time crime that dated back several weeks. He couldn't have been involved. Another dead end. The next day, Dr. Chun performed the full autopsy on B's body. Her findings confirmed our initial observations, and then added horrifying detail. The cause of death was determined to be manual strangulation, Dr. Chun stated, her voice grim. The cold water had initially concealed the subtle bruises on her neck. There were also some signs of trauma in certain areas consistent with sexual assault, in addition to extensive bruising indicative of violence to the head and face. B had endured a truly brutal death. But the autopsy also revealed critical physical evidence. Look at her eyes, David, Dr. Chun directed, holding a magnifying glass to B's left eye. There's a blue contact lens in the left eye, but there is no contact lens in the right eye. It's missing. It was the backing to a gold earring, a small, almost insignificant piece. Only the backing, so the earring is missing. My mind raced. A missing contact lens, a missing earring. These were more than just details. They were fragments of the actual crime scene, the moments of struggle. If we could find the missing earring, or that unique blue-tinted contact lens, it would lead us to the precise location where B. Callahan met her horrific end. Thank you very much, Dr. Chun, I said, a renewed sense of purpose invigorating me. If you find anything else, let me know. The question hung heavy in the air, echoing across our small, once peaceful town. Who could do this? Who could do such a horrific thing to B. Callahan? Why? Why would anyone do something so heinous to such a beautiful soul, inside and out? It was a crime that utterly shocked the conscience of Maplewood Hollow, transforming it overnight from a sleepy bedroom community into a town gripped by fear, a murderer at large. The old was muttered endlessly. Things like that don't happen here. But unfortunately, things like that do happen in small towns. There are good people who lead their normal lives, but they're also monsters, and once in a while, they show themselves. B's murder rocked Maplewood Hollow to its core. The community, horrified, The tip line flowed with an astronomical amount of information, every resident with a tidbit, a suspicion, a memory they believed might help. As I sifted through these anonymous tips, one report stood out. A woman had called reporting that she was taking her niece to the bus stop early on the morning of June 1st, the day B's body was discovered. As they passed the bridge over Serenity Stream Falls, she saw a car parked on the bridge. The car was described as a boxy-style, blue or greenish sedan vehicle. It was completely out of the ordinary for a car to be parked there at that hour. Well, why is it parked there? I thought, a grim answer already forming in my mind. Maybe, just maybe, it was parked there because its occupant was in the process of dumping a body into the river from this very car. I made a mental note. This car, if found, could be a critical piece of evidence. I continued to interview everyone who knew B. We discovered a long-time acquaintance, Harold Jameson. They had an on-again, off-again relationship for years. This was someone who definitely needed to be intensely drilled down upon. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me, Mr. Jameson," I began, in a small interview room at the station. We asked him about their relationship, its status at the time. He explained that he hadn't spoken with or seen B for about 3 weeks prior to the murder. "Mr. Jameson, I was wondering if you recalled where you were the night of May 31st. Harold gave a very troubling account of his movements. "Well, actually, I was over by the laundromat," he said. My heart leaped. "The laundromat, where B's car was found. You were—" "Yeah," he continued. "The night of the 31st, I was out for a bit, and I drove by the laundromat. I saw B's car, and it was running right in front of the place. We'd kind of left things on a bad note a few weeks back, and I wanted to set things right with her. So I waited on her." He described waiting in a parking lot next door for a while. He never saw her come out to the car. He eventually walked around, checked the laundromat, but didn't find her anywhere. Eventually, he just went home. "So you didn't think anything was odd?" I asked, incredulous. "And you didn't think to report it?" "I didn't know it," he stammered, looking distraught. "I just didn't think anything about it at the time. I thought maybe she'd gone off with a friend or something. You know, she's an adult." "You didn't think about it?" This was, without a doubt, one of the worst stories I'd ever heard. Was it that bad of a lie? Or was he simply a naive, oblivious, so utterly dense he wouldn't think anything was amiss about an idling car, a frantic, barking dog, and a woman who couldn't be found in a town this small? "Look, I would never hurt B," Harold insisted, tears welling in his eyes. "I loved her." He was visibly distraught about her death. He was cooperative, even consenting to a search of his car. No signs of struggle, no evidence of any kind was found. I didn't feel like he was the killer, but I couldn't eliminate him either. Not yet. Chapter 3. The Maintenance Man Scratches. Sergeant Eva Russo and I were discussing the Harold Jameson interview, the puzzle pieces still stubbornly refusing to align, when the phone on my desk rang. It was Chief Evans, his voice laced with urgency. "David, I just received a call from a witness. They found something at the apartment building above the laundromat. Get down there now, and tell them not to touch anything." "I'll be right down." My heart hammered with a renewed sense of purpose. This was it, a direct link to B. Callahan's last known whereabouts. I was on my way to the laundromat building, where apartments were undergoing construction on the 3rd floor. A carpenter, it turned out, was working on renovations in the building. As he was cutting some wood, he'd noticed something glowing faintly in the sawdust. An earring. The news of B's murder had by now traveled like wildfire through our small town, and he immediately knew it had to be connected. The State Police Major Crime Squad was quickly dispatched to the location, the newly identified crime scene. They meticulously began their scene investigation, processing every inch of the unfinished apartment. And, astonishingly, one of the sharp-eyed crime scene detectives made a second, equally critical discovery. Tucked into a crevice, beneath a pile of wood shavings, was a small, blue-tinted contact lens. It was the missing blue contact lens from the right eye of Beatrice Callahan. There was no longer any question in anyone's mind. This was the exact location where B. Callahan met her horrific death. The very place where the struggle had unfolded, where the last agonizing moments of her life played out. The finding of the crime scene provided critical context. It indicated to us that the perpetrator had to be somebody with a high degree of familiarity, access, and comfort with the building. Someone who could easily navigate the construction chaos, Someone with a key. The carpenter says only 2 people have a key to this door. Officer Bell informed me. Well, there's Victor Hayes, the guy that owns the place, and the maintenance man, Arthur Finch. We quickly, fortunately, were able to rule Victor Hayes out. He had a rock-solid alibi, proving he was not in town at the time of the murder. That left Arthur Finch. Arthur Finch, a name I hadn't heard before in the context of this investigation. We were not that familiar with Brian personally. I'd later recall, but he was from a local family, known in the community, and his employment at the building, his ready access, his inherent familiarity, he clearly had to be considered a prime suspect. Back at the station, a rapid background check on Arthur Finch brought a chilling jolt of recognition. Chief Evans was in my office as I reviewed the file. Chief, you're not going to believe what I found on this Finch suspect. Arthur Finch wasn't just a maintenance man. He had a prior conviction for stranger abduction and sexual assault, and he had only recently gotten out of jail after serving a significant sentence. This was a massive, seismic shift in the investigation. My mind, accustomed to the patterns of predatory behavior, recoiled. He'd been caught once. How many times had he not been caught? This was not just a person of interest. This was a monster unleashed. I wanted to talk to him. Immediately. Arthur Finch came in willingly, seemingly unfazed by the police presence, but his demeanor was uneasy, jumpy. As he sat down in the interview room, I noticed a distinct, jagged scratch over his nose, extending from one eyebrow to the other, a nasty, fresh mark. Mr. Finch, I began, my voice steady, but my eyes fixed on the wound. That's a nasty mark you got there. I got it at work, he stammered, his gaze darting away. Something happened at work. Finch was sketchy, very nervous about the fact that we were approaching him. But there was something more. A coldness behind his eyes, a predatory quality that sent a prickle down my spine. This could be our player. Mr. Finch, I wanted to ask you about your prior conviction. I pressed, cutting to the chase. He explained his prior conviction as a misunderstanding, a hazy tale of being drunk and encountering a woman. Things went wrong, he claimed. He also admitted to abusing drugs and alcohol in the past, but insisted he doesn't do drugs anymore. Still, occasionally drinks. Then, I shifted the topic to Mr. Finch, did you know Beatrice? He reacted with surprising rapidity, almost dismissing the question. No, I don't know her. His reaction was odd. Maplewood Hollow was not a big town. B had lived right up the road from this very building. There had to have been some passing acquaintanceship. Another lie. Can you tell me where you were the night of May 31st? I asked, challenging his already shaky alibi. He claimed his activities included working in the building during the day, then going to the local pizza place across the street, before finally going home to bed. His alibi was incredibly thin. He spent the latter half of the evening alone, save for his time at the pizza parlor. Do you drive a car, Mr. Finch? I haven't driven a car in a while, he claimed, stating his license was under suspension. If he was truthful about not having a car, it would have been incredibly difficult to dispose of a human body in a remote area like Sorrento Stream Falls. As the interview continued, and we pressed him further, his composure finally broke. I do not want to participate in this interview anymore, he stated, his voice sharp, rising slightly. Arthur Finch was still a suspect, a very strong one. But despite all the damning circumstantial evidence, the proximity to the crime scene, the access, the prior conviction, the physical scratches, the suspicious demeanor, the mounting lazette didn't yet rise to the level of keeping him under arrest. We had to let him go. But before he left, I noticed he'd been smoking nervously throughout the interview. I want to get somebody from the evidence in here, I instructed Officer Bell. I knew that someday, those cigarette butts, those seemingly insignificant discarded items, just might mean something. Arthur Finch had presented himself as our prime suspect. Now it was time to look into him very carefully, very methodically. Chapter 4. The Truth Unraveled. The first step in looking into Arthur Finch very carefully was to cross-reference his lies. I began by questioning the regulars of the laundromat and the building itself. I was wondering if any of you knew anyone by the name of Arthur Finch. The responses came almost immediately, with startling consistency. Yeah, I sure did, one woman stated. Which one do you know about him? Oh, everyone here knows Arthur. I found, almost at once, that Finch had lied to me. They all confirmed that Finch knew B. They'd seen him talk to her on many occasions, We even had witnesses who specifically told us that he had prior conversations with her, right in the area of the apartment building. In a small town like Maplewood Hollow, people talked, and everybody knew everyone's business. B, it turned out, had even had a conversation with Finch about relocating from her apartment building, seeking his advice or information. Yet, Finch had denied even knowing who the victim was. Anytime you interviewed somebody, you're looking for the first lie, because if you lie to me, I'm talking to the right person. Finch's lies were stacking up, forming a precarious tower of deceit. By Finch's own admission, he had gone to the Risi Brothers Pizza, placed across from the laundromat on the evening of May 31st, and had a few beers. My next stop was the pizza place, to see what brothers Vincenzo and Carlo Ricci had to say about their interaction with Mr. Finch that evening. "How's it going, Johnno Vincenzo?" I greeted the co-owner. "Hey, detective, how's it going?" We interviewed the brothers, John and Anthony Ricci, who owned the pizza place. They both knew the maintenance guy, Arthur, I later recounted. He came across as actually a really nice guy. He would come in quite frequently. Was he here on the 31st? Both brothers described him as being profoundly depressed and clearly under the influence. "Hey, Arthur, you doing okay? You seem a little upset," Carlo had asked him. "My girlfriend, man," Finch had muttered. Apparently, the woman he was with, he had caught her with another man. He claimed he couldn't handle that, had gotten really upset, had a big, ugly argument with her, and had been drinking all day. Carlo's sister, Maria, who worked behind the counter, even sat down with him. He had asked her to go to the local bowling alley down the street with him. "Come on, you can come for a little while." Maria had politely declined, stating they were about to close up shop. It had been a very uncomfortable scene. They both agreed. These lies painted a picture of a man desperate to conceal his true nature, a man unraveling. So I brought Finch back in for a second interview, ready to confront him with the accumulating evidence of his deceit. "Arthur, we know, you newbie. We've got people who saw you conversing with her." I laid it out for him. No, he insisted, still stubbornly clinging to the initial lie. We confronted Finch with his many lies. At that point, he still claimed he did not know B, despite the direct witness statements. But he did admit to having fallen off the wagon, insisting it was due to being distraught over his cheating his girlfriend being with another man. It was an excuse, a partial truth intended to camouflage a deeper, more monstrous one. "What's your girlfriend's name, Arthur?" I pressed, shifting the focus. Melanie. Finch was emotional, distraught, putting on a whole scene, acting like he couldn't believe he was being blamed for this murder. "I'm done with all this," he protested, attempting to be dismissive. At that point, we still didn't have sufficient physical evidence for an arrest, but Mr. Finch was digging his own grave with every lie he uttered. The most important thing to emerge from this second interview was the name of his girlfriend, Clara Peterson. According to Finch, she was the cheating ex-girlfriend who had driven him to drink and drugs, who had sent him spies. That was a significant lead. We went out and interviewed Clara Peterson. She told us a completely different story about their breakup, painting a chilling picture of Finch's true character. "I don't even know where to begin with that man," she began, her voice weary. "He's out of control." Her story was that Finch had been drinking and using drugs again recently. They had a furious argument about it, and she had effectively thrown him out of her place. I now had clear, undeniable proof that Finch was lying completely about the context of his breakup with Clara. But then, at the very end of her statement, she delivered a final, crucial bombshell. "Plus, there's another thing. When I threw Arthur out of my place, he took my car. That car, it happened to be a vintage Volvo S70 sedan. It was a boxy-style sedan that was blue and greenish in color." "Really?" My mind flashed back to the anonymous tip. The witness who had seen a bluish-green boxy car on the bridge where B's body was found. This was it. That was important. I knew instantly. That was a very strong piece in the investigation at that point. Another nail in Mr. Finch's coffin. I thanked Clara Peterson, her words cementing Finch's involvement. Now, I faced the urgent task of finding that car. Remarkably, the car found us. A guy named Julian Cross called the police station, claiming to be Arthur Finch's cousin. "How are you doing, Mr. Cross?" I asked. "I hear you have something that might interest me." Julian explained that he had a blue-green vintage Volvo S70 sedan parked in his yard. He recounted how Finch had asked him to take the car up to a remote area of town and park it in a very specific, out-of-the-way spot. But Julian had a bad feeling about it, especially after hearing the news about B. Callahan's murder. He had decided, instead, to bring the car to the police. We hoped to find some biological trace evidence in that car, definitive proof that would link B to the car, and in turn, to Finch. I called in the CSI tech team. They meticulously went over the car, inch by painstaking inch. They soon found what they believed to be a body fluid stain on the passenger seat. They carefully removed that section of the seat cover and sent it to the state laboratory for analysis. Waiting for the results from the forensic lab was a long, painstaking process. It was frustrating. They had to be meticulously thorough, and that simply took time. Weeks crawled by, each day a test of patience. Each call to the lab met with the same answer. Still processing. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the results came in. Sergeant Sterling, the lab technician's voice was, as ever, calm, professional. The news was a mixed bag. The samples from the car definitively matched B. It unequivocally tied her to the specific car, confirming its use as the method of transportation for her remains. 2 Serenity Stream falls. Another vital link. But then, the disheartening news. There was no evidence to support the presence of a second person. No DNA from Arthur Finch was found within the body fluid stains. The state police laboratory claimed they were unable to get any DNA readings, or what they called amplification, from the remaining material. We had hoped for evidence directly connecting Finch and B in a biological sense, and we didn't get that. We could say that Finch had access to the car, and that B's bodily fluids were in it, but we did not have any biological evidence proving that Finch was the one driving the car, or that he was in it with her. I was left with a case where I was profoundly convinced that Arthur Finch was B. Callahan's rapist and murderer, but I was unable to prove this beyond a reasonable doubt in a courtroom. We only had one shot. If the jury threw it out and said not guilty, we couldn't come back at him. All circumstances pointed to him. Yes. But there just wasn't enough direct, unequivocal physical evidence to get an arrest and a conviction. So, I did what all homicide detectives sometimes have to do, a task both agonizing and essential. I waited. Chapter 5. Justice's Slow Bloom. The waiting was excruciating. It was horrible. A persistent gnawing at the edges of my professional resolve. But patience, a grim necessity in a world of cold cases, was something I possessed. Something I needed. I knew I couldn't prosecute Finch then and there. I had to wait for some other method, some future scientific advancement, to unequivocally tie Mr. Finch to this horrific crime. The frustration of living with an unsolved case, day in and day out, was a heavy burden. They saw me, the lead investigator, as the stumbling block between justice and the brutal death of a beloved community member. You see these people at church, in a grocery store, at every turn. It was particularly difficult to face B's daughters, Grace and Lily. Why would somebody have done that? How could you? How could you do something like that? But I, Sergeant Sterling, did not quit. We just kept piling up all the evidence that we could. But the more time that passed, the stronger the grim reality became. I was still absent some vital linking pieces to bring this whole thing together and secure a conviction. I explored every avenue, every possibility. At one point, I approached a colleague. Sergeant Sterling came to me and was discussing the wood that was found in the car. They'd recall. He wanted somebody to compare it to the wood at what we believed to be the crime scene in the apartment above the laundromat. I found out the FBI has a wood expert, my colleague said. A wood expert, I retorted. Incredulous. What do you mean? There's a professor of wood, but if there was an expert, I would use them. We brought in experts in wood evidence, consultants from outside the state lab. Their determination was meticulously detailed. The wood chips and fragments found in the car, indeed, originated from the materials at the apartment building above the laundromat, proving they were transferred from the primary crime scene into the car, and subsequently could have been transferred to the secondary dump site at Serenity Stream. It was innovative, cutting-edge science for the time. But it was, in a sense, junk science as well, relative to what the future would hold. Everyone, even then, was looking for DNA. Everyone wanted that sure hit, the ceiling-high numbers that DNA evidence could provide. My dedication was acknowledged, but my evidence, however novel, was not quite enough. But if you look at where my mind was going on this, you can just see that I wasn't giving up. We had to wait for DNA science to move forward. We had to wait for some other irrefutable method to tie Mr. Finch to this crime unequivocally. And so, the matter went cold. It stayed cold for a long, agonizing time. It stayed cold until the year 2013. 16 years, 16 long years later, the case came down to science. Technology had advanced in a rapid, almost unimaginable way. The very cold case unit that I had helped establish in my later years at the department, the original physical evidence, meticulously preserved by my foresight, was re-examined. DNA in the biological material that had been found in Clara Peterson's car. They were able to draw semen from the body fluid stains. Sergeant David Sterling had been so prescient to keep when I first talked to Arthur Finch back in 1998. And there it was. We had them at this point, the lead cold case detective informed me. The numbers were so astronomically through the ceiling that we had them. David, we had known, through my diligence over the years, that Finch was residing in South Carolina. Along with federal assistance, traveled south, and arrested him without incident. He was transported up to Connecticut, brought back to the scene of his heinous crime. They attempted an interview. Finch, of course, declined. The likelihood was now great, virtually certain, and freshly infuriated by his cheating girlfriend, Clara. He hated the world, and most likely, he particularly hated women at that moment. And then, he saw Beatrice Callahan. Somebody he knew, someone familiar. It's a crime of power, of control, often the punishment of women. Arthur Finch, at that moment, was consumed by a blinding, toxic rage, and he needed to hurt someone. Hey Arthur, how are you? Be ever friendly, ever. Hey, did you want to check out that empty apartment upstairs I was telling you about? Maybe you'd like to move in? Oh, I've got the dog in the car. I shouldn't be long. Oh, it'll only take a minute. Just a quick peek. Yeah, come on. She didn't feel threatened by him. Once they got up into the apartment, the door closed, and the monster inside Arthur Finch emerged. He attacked her brutally. He raped her. He manually strangled her, savagely taking her life. He bound her by duct tape, carried her lifeless body down the stairs, and placed her in the backseat of Clara's Volvo. He drove her down to Serenity Stream Falls in the early hours of the morning. He then went on about his miserable business, and for 16 long, unpunished years, he got away with it. Until the relentless march of science, and the unwavering dedication of detectives, finally caught up to him. Arthur Finch was formally charged with murder and presented before a judge at Superior Court in Middletown. I was shocked at his appearance. The case went through its prosecution phase. Finally, in 2016, realizing the insurmountable mountain of evidence against him, Finch decided to plead guilty to B's murder. He was sentenced to the rest of his natural life in prison. Given his precarious physical condition, he wasn't going to last that long. But that's where he went. He would not get out alive, no doubt. Their faces, still etched with the pain of decades, now bore a fragile sense of closure. I'm glad he's finally paying the price for what he did, Grace said, her voice clear, firm. It's just a good thing that it's finally done. Someone who was loved, who was so kind to people. So, Karen, she's truly missed. B is truly, truly missed. Personally, I have no regrets as to how long this took. I have a lot of frustration, yes, from the years of waiting, but I also have a profound sense of satisfaction. If I had not resolved this case to this day, I still would be working on it, because justice demanded it. And now, justice has been provided. He met his justice, and B. Callahan, at long last, found hers. Slanted through the dense canopies of maple and oak, painting dappled gold across the winding paths of Ravens Hollow, Vermont. It was 3 o'clock on a Monday, the humid air thick with the promise of summer, and the bell from Blackwood Creek High School had just chimed, releasing a torrent of eager, boisterous students. They were not, however, headed straight home. The siren song of Ravens Leap Falls, a beloved local hangout where the swift Blackwood Creek tumbled over ancient rock formations into a deep, cool pool, was far too potent to resist. Laughter and excited chatter echoed through the burgeoning green of the woods as they made their way down the familiar, winding trail. I can't believe it's only Monday, Michael, the tallest of the group, groaned good-naturedly, adjusting the brim of his baseball cap. His friends, Sarah and Ben, jostled him playfully. a favorite spot for skipping stones and dipping their toes in the chilly current. But the usual easy banter died in their throats, their youthful exuberance replaced by a sudden, profound, and terrifying silence. Something was in the water. At first, it was just a dark, indistinct shape, partially submerged, bobbing gently in the slow current near the deeper part of the pool where the water pooled before accelerating towards a smaller cascade. An old piece of debris caught in the current. As they ventured closer, drawn by an irresistible, morbid curiosity, the shape slowly, horribly, began to resolve itself, the grayish blue of fabric clinging to an unnatural stillness, the stark, disturbing outline of a human form. The idyllic Monday afternoon, the promise of a carefree summer, evaporated in an instant. Michael, the one who first spotted it, simply pointed, unable to articulate the scream caught in his throat. Sarah, a moment later, was the one who found her voice, a raw, primal shriek that tore through the quiet woods. Then she fumbled for her newly acquired pager, trying to get help, to make sense of a world that had. My name is Detective Sergeant Miles Corbin, and in 1998, I was an investigative sergeant with the Blackwood Creek Police Department. It was a time of pagers and landlines, a slower, yet no less intense, era of law enforcement. Blackwood Creek, nestled amongst the rolling, verdant hills of Vermont, was a postcard town, a picture of quiet charm, known more for its quaint village green, historical homes, and maple syrup festivals than for violent crime. We hadn't had a homicide in nearly 10 years. Life, by all accounts, was peaceful, predictable. That Monday, I was enjoying a rare day off, the kind of precious, fleeting escape from the grind that every cop cherishes. I was driving my 3 children to swim practice, the familiar drone of their cheerful chatter a comforting background to my own quiet thoughts. Suddenly, my pager, a clunky, familiar device on my belt, chirped insistently. The display showed the department's main line. I knew. But the terse message awaiting me when I checked in was far more grave. Victim found in a remote area in Blackwood Creek. In Blackwood Creek, I'd always longed to be involved in the big one, the case that truly challenged every ounce of my experience. I was about to get my wish, but I truly had no idea what horrors lay ahead. When I arrived at the scene, a patrol supervisor said he and Elena Reed, unsettling testament to the horror they'd discovered. The location itself was starkly beautiful, a place of serene, untamed wilderness, the Blackwood Creek stream, swollen with recent rains. It was one of those places only locals knew, tucked away down an obscure, winding dirt road that casual passers-by would never find. The isolation, the profound quiet, only amplified the unnatural stillness radiating from the creek. Miles, what do we have? Sergeant Reyes asked, her voice low, mirroring the gravity of the situation. Officer Leo Chun, a younger officer who'd been the first uniformed responder on scene. Officer Chun, what's known so far? Like something you'd see out of maybe an Alfred Hitchcock movie or something, just unnatural. I leaned over the Muscoved railing of the bridge, my gaze following Chun's pointing finger. The indistinct shape of the submerged form, a grim punctuation mark in the pristine landscape, immediately shifted into analytical gear, though even I felt a profound chill seep into my bones. We immediately summoned the Vermont State Police Major Crime Squad for evidence processing. Their crime scene technicians were a crack team, experts in their field. The scene, now illuminated by portable halogen lights as the afternoon deepened into evening. Almost immediately, vital clues began to emerge from their meticulous work. Torn and discarded a common tool for abduction or restraint scattered near the water's edge. Further scrutiny by the forensic team revealed faint but unmistakable drag marks leading from the paved path down through the undergrowth to the very spot where the body had been discovered, scuffing the damp earth. And just beyond the clearing, barely visible in the soft mud of an unofficial packing area, unloaded its gruesome cargo, and then sped away. We knew where the victim ended, submerged in 3 feet of frigid water, a macabre offering to the silent woods. "Okay, let's turn her over," I directed, my voice cutting through the quiet efficiency. Arrived and carefully supervised the painstaking process of removing the body from the water. State police divers and EMTs, working with grim precision, gently maneuvered the body onto a waterproof stretcher. With agonizing slowness, she was then turned over, her face finally revealed to the cold light of the fading day. The water, clear and cold, cascaded off the lifeless form, revealing the true horror. And as soon as her face was revealed, my breath hitched. I know her, I stated, a grim knot forming in my stomach, the words barely audible. My mind struggled to reconcile the image of the beloved local, known for her kindness and ready smile, with the brutal indignity of her discovery. She had, in fact, been reported missing just that very morning. Officer Chun, still absorbing the shock of the identification, relayed another piece of the unfolding puzzle, one that had preceded the grim discovery. Containing a frantically barking little dog, they noticed it was unusual. The car had been there all night. Officer Chun had gained entry into the car, finding Aggie's purse undisturbed on the front seat. It contained currency, her ID, credit cards, all still there, nothing taken. He'd even found wet clothing, still warm from a completed cycle. She would never, ever leave her dog, especially for such an extended period, idling in a parked car overnight. Something, he knew then, was profoundly, terribly wrong. And now, all those unspoken fears had materialized into this grim tableau by Raven's Leap Falls, confirming the worst. I don't think I can tell you much more until we conduct a full autopsy, Sergeant, Dr. Vance informed me, her voice devoid of emotion, her eyes focused on the body. There are no apparent gunshot wounds, no visible stab wounds on the external body. However, she's been submerged in very cold water for hours, which has a tendency to close and conceal openings in the skin. Matching the duct tape found nearby, are clear. There's obvious perimortem binding. The pieces were beginning to coalesce, forming a brutal, and then dumped like refuse. The peaceful facade of Blackwood Creek had been savagely ripped away. Our small town would never be the same. Chapter 2. The Widening Circle. The first, painful task after Agnes Abernathy's identification was always the death notification. It was a solemn, harrowing duty that never got easier. I knew both of Aggie Callahan's daughters, Abigail and Iris, from town, having seen them grow up in our tight-knit community. This was more than just a duty. It was a deeply emotional and personal wrench. Delivering news that their beloved mother had been found murdered, treated with such brutal disregard, was a moment that seared itself into my memory, a grim etching on the soul. Their faces, initially a mask of anxiety and hope, dissolved into heart-wrenching grief as I spoke the terrible words. I just don't understand why anyone would do this to her, Abigail sobbed, her voice thick with pain and confusion, her hands clutching a worn photograph of her mother. Iris echoed her sister's anguish, tears streaming down her face. I couldn't believe it, Miles, and especially the way they found her. The indignity, the callousness of the act, seemed to compound their sorrow. In the days that followed, I spoke to dozens of Aggie's friends. My aim was to unearth any enemies, any shadows in her seemingly bright and open existence. Each person offered the same, unwavering refrain. Aggie was a sweet, lovely, wonderful, warm, and loving person. Her generosity was legendary, her empathy profound. She would give you the most amazing hugs you could possibly imagine. One close friend recounted, tears welling in her eyes. Your whole world felt safe when Aggie hugged you. She just radiated kindness. Aggie was employed as a home health aide, working for a local agency that served Blackwood Creek and the surrounding towns. She was, in essence, a professional caregiver, a person whose life was fundamentally dedicated to doing something for someone else, always putting herself aside for others. You don't find people like that anymore, another friend sighed, shaking her head. You just don't. She was one in a million. That chilling question became my driving obsession, echoing in my mind as I sifted through the innocuous details of her life. I was charged, by my oath, and by the unspoken pleas of the community, with finding the answer. Was she dating anybody? Something we should know about. Officer Chun, his initial shock slowly giving way to determined professionalism, asked during a case conference. Said they had gone out on a date or two. He seemed quite smitten with her. Owen Davies, he immediately became our first, natural person of interest. We brought him into the station for an interview, and he came in willingly, though clearly shaken and profoundly saddened by the news of Aggie's death. He was a soft-spoken, unassuming man, his grief appearing genuine. How long have you and Aggie been seeing each other, Mr. Davies? I began, keeping my voice neutral, observing his reactions closely. We'd just started to get to know each other. Sergeant, he explained, his voice gentle, tinged with regret. Mr. Davies, you may not see it this way, I said, laying out the uncomfortable truth of our methodology, but as a homicide detective, I have to consider everyone close to the victim as a potential suspect until proven otherwise. I need to know your movements during the crucial time frame of the murder. Where were you on the night of May 31st, leading into the early morning of June 1st? Mark immediately provided a clear, almost foolproof alibi. I was away for a few days, at the New England Regional Bowling Tournament, over in Springfield. This wasn't just a simple statement. He provided names, contact numbers, and even photographs. Crucially, several of the participants at the tournament were off-duty officers from various departments. We verified his story quickly and unequivocally. He was absolutely ruled out as a suspect. No bad vibes from Mark at all. He was simply a grieving friend, mourning the brutal loss of a kind soul. As we continued to canvass Aggie's social circle, one of her former neighbors approached Officer Chun, relaying a disturbing detail. "Did anybody tell you guys about the guy who was spying on Aggie?" she whispered, glancing nervously around the precinct lobby. Interesting. Very interesting. This was a new, potentially promising lead. These unsettling occurrences made her profoundly uncomfortable, to the point where she was actively looking for another apartment. Mr. Peeping Tom, someone of interest, finally. This might have some promise. My instincts, honed by years of seeing how seemingly minor acts could escalate, sexual deviancy, even low-level voyeurism, could be a precursor to something far darker. I knew that often, predators tested boundaries, escalating their behavior when unchecked. We immediately dispatched a team back to Aggie's apartment building, a modest red-brick lorries complex on Willow Street, just off Main. We began speaking to all the residents, seeking confirmation of the Peeping Tom rumor. "Did you, by chance, ever hear anything about someone spying on Aggie, or looking through her windows? Anything unusual?" I asked, showing them a photo of Aggie. None of the residents seemed to have any knowledge of a Peeping Tom looking in any window, until we encountered a woman in a ground-floor apartment, her face tight with defensiveness. She, of course, fiercely denied that her son could have any involvement or responsibility in doing anything harmful to Aggie. "Finn's a good boy," she insisted, her gaze unwavering. We weren't swayed by a mother's loyal, but ultimately transparent, denial. "Would it be possible for us to speak with Finn, ma'am?" I asked, my voice calm but firm. "Sure can," she replied, a faint note of triumph in her voice. "Just go down to the county jail where you people locked him up." A quick check of local records confirmed her claim. Finn Carter, we quickly ascertained, was indeed a local petty criminal, currently locked up, serving a short sentence for a small-time theft conviction that dated back several weeks, encompassing the time of Aggie's murder. Another promising lead that dissolved into a dead end, adding to the mounting frustration. The next day, Dr. Vance performed a full autopsy on Aggie's body, her methodical precision offering a grim solace in its search for truth. Her findings confirmed our initial observations from the creek, and then added horrifying, meticulous detail to B's last moments. The cause of death was determined to be manual strangulation, Dr. Vance stated, her voice stark, devoid of emotion, yet carrying the weight of ultimate finality. The frigid water had indeed, as she predicted, initially concealed the subtle bruises on Aggie's neck, only to be revealed by the careful examination. There were also some clear signs of trauma in certain areas consistent with sexual assault, in addition to extensive bruising indicative of blunt force trauma to the head and face. Aggie, this kind, gentle woman, had endured a truly brutal and terrifying death, experiencing both sexual violence and a beating before being struck. But the autopsy also revealed two critical, minuscule pieces of physical evidence that electrified me, offering the first tangible, actionable leads to the primary crime scene. "Look closely at her eyes, David," Dr. Vance directed, holding a powerful magnifying glass to Aggie's left eye. There is a blue-tinted soft contact lens, still perfectly in place in her left eye, but there is no contact lens in the right eye. It's missing. Then, as Dr. Vance meticulously combed through Aggie's short, silver hair, her instrument found a small, metallic lint. She carefully plucked it out with tweezers, dropping it onto a sterile cloth. Only the backing, so the earring itself is missing. My mind raced, connecting the dots, a missing blue contact lens, a missing gold earring. These were more than just details. They were fragments of the actual crime scene, microscopic breadcrumbs from the moments of struggle. If we could find a missing earring, or that unique blue-tinted contact lens, it would, with almost mathematical certainty, lead us directly to the precise location where Aggie Callahan met her horrific end. The actual location of the murder, rather than just the dump site. "Thank you very much, Dr. Vance," I said, a renewed sense of purpose invigorating me, chasing away the fatigue. "If you find anything else, please let me know immediately." The question continued to hang heavy in the air, echoing across our small, once peaceful town. Who could do this? Who could do such a horrific thing to Agnes Abernathy? Why would anyone perpetrate such an act of unspeakable evil against such a truly kind, gentle soul, a person renowned for her beautiful spirit? It was a crime that utterly shocked the conscience of Blackwood Creek, transforming it overnight from a sleepy bedroom community into a town gripped by pervasive fear. The chilling realization that a remorseless murderer was at large, walking amongst them. The old was muttered endlessly on every street corner, in every diner. Things like that don't happen here, but unfortunately, things like that do happen in small towns. Beneath the veneer of idyllic charm, there are good people who lead their normal lives, but there are also monsters. And once in a while, under the wrong circumstances, they show themselves, tearing apart the illusion of safety. The community, horrified, traumatized, rallied in its grief and outrage. The tip line flowed with an astronomical amount of information, a continuous deluge of calls from concerned residents. Every single